All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all so much for being here this evening. My name is Madeline Fitzgerald, and I am the manager of adult programs here at the Amon Carter Museum of American Art. Thank you all for joining us this evening for our Artist Talk with Leonardo Drew. On behalf of the museum, I would especially like to welcome and thank our members who are in the audience this evening. It is because of your generosity that our collection and special exhibitions are free and open to everyone. I'd like to thank the Art Bridges Foundation's Access for All program for their generous support of Second Thursdays at the Carter. Every second Thursday, you can connect with art through cocktails, conversations, and creativity. Each month, you'll find something different, from performances and artist talks, unique tours to art making, music, and films. We want to especially thank Tally Dunn Gallery for their support in making the Carter's presentation of Leonardo Drew, number 235T, possible. And I would lastly like to thank the staff at Hired Hands for providing American Sign Language interpretation for tonight's talk. Thank you. I have the pleasure of introducing our speakers this evening. Joining the Carter's curator of paintings, sculptures, and works on paper, Shirley Reece-Hughes, is artist Leonardo Drew. Over his 3-decade-long career, Leonardo Drew has become known for creating contemplative, abstract sculptural works that are monumental in scale and intimate in detail. His work, which recalls post-minimalist sculpture, alludes to America's industrial past, transforming raw materials such as wood and scrap metal and cotton into landscapes that evoke the cyclical nature of life and decay, the erosion of time, and the ecosystems surrounding labor. Drew's natural talent and passion for art was recognized at an early age, first exhibiting his work at the age of 13. He went on to attend the Parsons School of Design and received his BFA from the Cooper Union for the Advancement of Science and Art in 1985. His works have been shown nationally and internationally and are included in numerous public and private collections. Public institutions include the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Museum of Modern Art, both in New York, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles, the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden in Washington, D.C., and Tate, London, among others. He currently lives and works in Brooklyn, New York. Immediately following Leonardo and Shirley's conversation, we will transition into a Q&A with all of you. I will have a handheld microphone, which will allow for your questions to be heard on the recording of tonight's talk, which we will subsequently be posting on the Carter's YouTube channel in the coming weeks. All right, that's all the business from me. Please help join me in welcoming Leonardo Drew and Shirley Reece-Hughes.
Thank you all so much for coming. This is so exciting for me because I honestly feel like it is my conversations with artists from which I learn the most. So we're thrilled to have Leonardo here. And we're going to have a running slide presentation in the back that Leonardo put together for us that really provides a great overview of his career. And one of the things I want to bring out that Madeline mentioned is what a prodigious talent Leonardo Drew is. Not many 13-year-olds are asked to have art exhibitions. And this is kind of a life-size painting of Captain America. And I think, you had that fascinating beginning, and we did have people in our education department that was curious, particularly as they work with children, that were interested in your childhood and what you did as a child and how you got interested in art.
Interested in art. That statement in itself holds an interesting, more inward idea of like who we are as we're coming into this, into this world. I came in as an artist. I think I'm not alone. There are a lot of artists who come in this way. I mean, some of us on the level of being an addict. I'm an addict. My mother is a force of nature. She tried to stop me, couldn't get it done. I'm here right now talking to you because she couldn't get it done. But the truth of the matter is that, you're born an artist. Some of us, I had the pleasure recently talking to Barack Obama. and he asked me, like, this is very same thing, like, when did you become an artist? I said, what is that? I said, you don't become an artist, you're born an artist. He said, bullshit, you know? He said, Mark, you know, rapper, like, you know, it's like started at 33, and it's like, he's like killing it. And it's like, I say, he was always an artist, you know? It just takes sometimes the right vehicle to come along and introduce that fact, you know? But like in the end, it's as you're moving through this, as you're navigating through this and you're on your journey, you're realizing more and more that this is something that you're put on earth to do. So as a kid, you know, I didn't know where I was gonna end up. I mean, growing up in the projects, and you know, you would think that you put it together and say, well, this is a way to get out of it. I mean, if DC and Marvel and heavy metal magazines approaching you and say, hey, you know, like, you know, you should be working with us. And I'll tell you, DC Comics had the Superman movie out at the time with the Christopher Reeve, the original.
Yeah, like 1978.
And 77 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And like, and they were saying, as a bargaining chip, they say, come work with us. They don't even have a movie. They don't have movies, you know? Now I have things have changed, you know? But it's just a part of the history of me in terms of understanding facility, of navigating this kind of idea of, okay, you're a born maker. What do you do with this, though? I mean, I was like just making things, you know, and grabbing and like pulling in. And these guys are saying, okay, this talent can be used, your facility can be used for this, because you're at that level where you can actually make this kind of work. But I had seen Jackson Pollock, and that was pretty much, that put the kibosh on the whole idea of like, okay, using your facility. There's nothing wrong with using your facility. There are a lot of artists who use their facility and that, you know, for things like that, and then actually being also fine artists. And using the facility in that way. But I decided to tie my hands to say, no more of this. You know, like if you're going to sort of get to where Jackson Pollock is, which is beyond that prettified surface, there's something else going on here. When I saw his work for the first time, I went into shock. It was like, and I saw it in black and white, in a little black and white book on modern. They said black and white, still powerful. I mean, straight up kick ass. And I was like, you know, what is this? You know, it was like, you know, so you imagine like a 16-year-old looking at Jackson Pollock and going like, you know, well, I can do this, but what is this, you know? And, you know, I've been sort of like following that ever since, you know? I mean, even my first piece, serious piece, which this is leading into that. I mean, look at dead animals in this piece. But it's like, when I said tie my hands, there's no way you're gonna be using your facility. If you're able to paint and you do that well, you draw well, whatever, don't do that anymore. Do not find another way to create.
Yeah.
You know, so it became like this.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that's fascinating is that you obviously were a very talented figurative drawer and painter, and then you said enough, and you said, I want to read a quote to the audience that said, I stopped drawing and painting in the early 80s because I wanted to continue to push myself artistically in new ways, but those skills return in the way I see and compose. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was interesting, like those skills are still there, but do you consciously think about them, or it just comes into
they're part
play?
of your history. I mean, it's layers, like the Grand Canyon, you know, it's like this layers of things, one on top of the other, that you, in one way or another, you don't necessarily have to even pull from them. They just come out naturally. I see delineations, I see gradations, all those things that were part of how I made my paintings when I was in the 70s. It was exhibiting in the 70s. So it was like, okay, say, what is it? Kid in the project, where is it? Kid in the project, where is the exhibit? Well, Westport, Connecticut. I'm from Bridgeport. So Westport, right next door is rich, poor. But those rich folks, we could get them over here, you know. And so there was a battle between the two. It was like Bridgeport. On the newspaper, who discovered Leonardo as though I was the landmass. So I had this, that's actually why I stopped reading. Because it was like, okay, these, people are actually, this is nastiness that was going on between the two cities.
Wow.
In terms of who discovered this kid, Mm-hmm. And Bridgeport, of course, was angry because it's like, well, he started with us and we actually, had mentors.
Yeah.
Because not as a kid, it was. That's a Jackson Pollock.
Yeah, and this is your
My version of a Jackson Pollock.
This is your number 8.
That's
and
number
I've
8.
heard
Yes.
you refer to this as the mother
Yes.
of the pieces.
That's correct.
And
the breakthrough.
The breakthrough.
Find your voice.
And it was clearly a manifestation of new possibilities that you're, expressing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk more about this particular piece?
Yeah, Jackson Pollock.
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty
Got it.
obvious if I pointed out. Says, okay, wait a minute. Like, if I was shocked by Jackson Pollock when I was like in my teens, by the time this rolls around, I'm already kind of like college second.
Yeah, I think this is
Second, third
1990, number 14. I also I wanted to ask, because most people, you introduced rust here. And I was curious what you were thinking about why
Decayed
introducing.
material. I mean, like you saw that. I was working with dead animals, organic,
Right.
Decayed material. So this is just oxidation of now non-organic. So it made sense. But I will confess that I didn't necessarily think like that. It was naturally kind of like progress into that. And this being the first of the rust pieces, which, there's a period where there's like a lot of rust works. And I believe there should be images of those rust works coming up. But in the end, or actually in the beginning, it's just like, you kind of follow this kind of, interesting enough, this kind of invisible through line. I can look backwards now and say, this makes sense. Like looking at, say, like something like this,
This is in the badge.
compared to, and at first of the where I started using cotton, it was from that one exhibition where cotton was introduced, and actually then had to step back and say, okay, no more of this material. It's like, it's powerful material, yes, but in the end, it was like, once you made that statement, for me anyway, it was like time to move on to the next thing. In the same way that I had addressed previously, like you get comfortable. Your skills are a comfort zone that I kind of feel like you need to challenge. And this cotton was one of those things where it's like, okay, you've done it. Let's actually move on to the next iteration. Leave this, for others. It's sort of like mine.
I noticed your scale expanded dramatically with this work. Was that, I know you had started traveling and you've traveled the globe. Do you think that was almost a widening of your world, like the landscape, thinking about?
I like that idea.
Okay.
I'll take that. I can only tell you that making things bigger just became problematic because living in in an apartment, like it's not a studio, like in Washington Heights. It's like sleeping in a bathtub. All the rooms had art in it, it was just, there's just stories about just being able to transform a living apartment into a studio space, and it wasn't a large space. And the friends would come out and they would go, "How are you gonna get this thing out of here?" So it's like, so you see these things in these compartments. I figured out how to sort of, after I figured, you can't get this out of here. You have to do it in sections that can actually, allow you to remove them from the premises.
Well, and one of the trademarks that you're known for is sort of cannibalizing your works. And I saw an interview this was the Brooklyn Rail, and the gentleman asked, number 8, you consider the mother. What happened to number 1 through 7? And what did you say?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, you can figure nothing is sacred in the studio.
Yeah.
So it's like I said it before about layering, this history that comes with, as many times you touch this material, as many lives that it's had, it is now becoming a part of the experience of the next iteration, the next piece. So the best works are made from other works. Number 8 is made from 1 to 7. Okay.
And one of the things that I think is interesting about your materials is they're relatable. So cotton is something essential. Cotton sheets, we all need cotton for clothing. Wood is part of shelter. Metal, we think of tools. So I think of them relatable. I mean, there's artists I think of mid-century working with a lot of plastics or that we identify with, but these are almost essentials to life. And, part of human needs, I would say. And I know that a goal of your work, and you're so much alive, is the fullness of life that you're trying to convey. And you're smiling.
I'm enjoying what you're saying, because like, last time, it's like the first time I ever hearing these things, it's like, what? I had never thought of that, you know? You know, this is always interesting, how art, the language of art.
Yeah.
That means one thing to create, but you guys actually have to make sense of it, you know? And so it's like, you know, it's like, wow. So this is beautiful. No, you guys are so necessary. There are times when it's kind of like, why are you just getting in my way, you know?
Right.
But the fact is, like, as you're sort of reading material, why you would use this material up against this material, what, you know, how has this now become a part of your language, your vocabulary? It's the truth of the matter is that I am moving so quickly and trying to sort of navigate these 7 crying babies in the studio that it doesn't really like matter at times, like why are you making it? You know, it's like I'm trying to attend to this one because it's crying the loudest. And it's like, now you're over here because this one needs it, you know? Yeah. So it's usually that rotation of these things in the studio that keep me juiced, you know? Yeah. I mean, juiced to the point now where I need new hands. Literally new hands. But like, yeah, I'm gonna get a new pair of hands, guys. But it's just it's been this ongoing kind of like battle in the studio to sort of like feed all this that wants to come out, you know? So the material, honestly, it's all of a sudden it's there, you know. All I know is that I don't take the shortcuts, meaning found objects. I don't, like, I have friends who work with things like you know, found objects, like Neri Ward works with that. He's a close friend of mine, and it makes powerful work. But I need to become the weather in order to sort of make these things become what they become. So this is store-bought material that has to be transformed. So I have to align myself with how things are made naturally, you know, and understanding, you know, even cosmically how things, you know, where we are in all this, it becomes a philosophy. Mm-hmm. Once you've sort of, how would I say, committed to this journey. And it can be a lot of bloodletting in this journey. I mean, it's like it's pain. There's pain now, literally, and like and it's like, wow. It's like you know, it's like, you know, I could have had a V8. but you know, I look at this and it's like, well, it's like when I get a chance to revisit some of these things, like this is in San Antonio, but this one's actually in St. Louis. And it's part of the Rust period, and it's like looking at it, it's like it's like that's like eons ago, you know?
Yeah.
And I look at this up against what you guys have on the wall out here, and it's like, and I say, I always go, don't look back, don't look back, don't look back, don't look back, you know, because it gets so kind of like it's like, you know, how the hell did that happen? I mean, really, you go backwards and you go like, okay, if DC Comics and Marvel Comics are fighting over you when you're a kid, it's like, that's a whole other life, a whole other way of making, you know? And then you go to this, and it's like, how does that make sense? So I say, don't look back, don't look back. Don't ask questions, just keep moving, you know?
Well, for those who don't know, Leonardo is extraordinarily prolific. I mean, he's created so many works in so many different places, and I'm wondering if you would talk a little bit about your process. Like, you like to, I've heard of sculptors who want to work on a table, but you like to work on the floor. Mm-hmm. Do you mind talking a little bit about your process, and when you talk about weathering, like the types of things that you do, like how you treat the wood, or even the assemblage? I don't want to. I'm leading you. Yeah. Or you don't have to give away.
All the artists are in there.
Yeah.
I'll get rolled all the time, but it's like I might as well give it up. But you know, on the floor. I'm almost sure that has to do with like my beginnings with like drawing on the floor. I'm more comfortable that way. You know, interesting also that these pieces that I'm making now become like cityscapes, depending on like, you know. Now, it was introduced to me to that fact was introduced to me by kids who play in front of the studio. So it's like the biggest area on the block is my studio area. And so they'll play out in front. And so they're looking and say like, oh, that looks like the city, you know, like I can see and I was like, You know, like I had them say, I do this, and then it goes up on the wall. And when I was doing City in the Grass for Madison Square Park, it was like, they inspired that, because when Brooke Rappaport approached me and said, we want you to do this sculpture, and she is such a fan and so enthusiastic, she was guiding me to make the most dangerous work of art that ever was in New York, you know what I mean? It would have collapsed on people. And it was like I said, boy, there's got to be another way. But when the kids said, they took it down to the ground, I was already naturally, but I was thinking, I'm going to do it here, and I'm going to put it up. But once they pointed that out to me, it was like, oh, I'm already naturally down here because of gravity, and making things on the floor. And let's keep it on the floor. So the city in the grass became exactly that, a city in the grass, So where you place your body, how you balance all this stuff in order to sort of to realize your work, for me, it's like a dance. So I'm open to suggestions. So even those kids were able to make a suggestion, and I ran with it. Things that you might say right now, might be of an influence. And I might say, oh, I hadn't thought of that,
And I want to bring up, while you were talking about that, the fact that you number your works instead of titling them. So there's no sort of subjective influence for the viewer. So the viewer becomes a participant.
Absolutely.
And, that was something that really didn't happen in art till mid-20th century. Louise Nevelson was thinking that way.
Oh, right.
And so now more 21st century artists do that. But I think you not titling it is really critical, because the number doesn't give you any clues.
Right.
And even, as you said, art historians, we want to label or define, and so you look at a title for information, but the beauty of it is that freedom of viewers. And I know some of our staff had wondered, do you like to watch people engage with your work? Do you like to hear what they say, or do you just prefer to observe? Or
I do both. And I mean, really, just sneaking up on them, it's harder to do that now. I mean, maybe it's body language or something that makes them know that, the way he's moving around this thing, if they spot me, they'll know that, it's this guy made this thing. And I try to hide that, but it seems more and more difficult to do that. Even just earlier today, as I was looking at the piece, I was trying to record some of the things and try to do it on the downloads. It didn't work. But you guys are complicit in finishing the works. I realized that a long time ago, that if I get the hell out of the way, I can also learn. Because I am not, singular on this journey. That means that you guys are also a part of this. So I can learn also. By just getting my ass out of the way,
And I think it's going to come up, but the City in the Grass, where kids or people were able to literally walk on it and engage with it, we'll come to it. But that's where you kind of actually saw more interaction, would you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there's, strangely enough that it seemed that way. I hope we have the images of folks jumping in front of the explosion.
Yes.
Is that in there?
Yeah, that's in there
honestly,
too.
I didn't look at this.
It's coming.
Melissa put them together, and I'm like, okay, I hope it, because I'm not scripted, as you can probably have figured it out, but.
But I did want to back up a second.
Yeah, let's see.
And talk about the white paper cast.
All these things come with a story. I mean, some of them so over the top.
I thought this was fascinating because this appeared like a departure from what you had been doing.
Yeah, but it was a forced departure because I, again, was starting to get comfortable. I had done the Rust works before this, and it was becoming a signature. And I said, okay, you need to give this one up. It's so what do you do? It's okay, your power is coming from this material, so how do I sort of completely wipe that out? It's white paper, And at least I consider this piece a failure because I say white paper, does that not look like plaster? So I actually took that piece and turned it into this. That piece that we saw previously is this piece.
So you
I crushed it and put it into these vitrines, hoping that the glass would give it the lightness of being of paper. And I hadn't seen this piece since I created it in the studios somewhere in Spain, some museum there. So I haven't seen it. But the fact is, when I look at this image, it's nice try, but not quite. if you keep going, you'll see the next iterations of this where it became, it took 3 years to get to this. If you look at this, now go backwards, go back. Look at, now go back again.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more?
And now go forward.
Okay.
Come on.
One more?
Oh my God. Now, that's paper.
That's amazing.
But that also has the emotional weight of what I was looking for. The ones before this, the other two, which is the same piece, it's me struggling to sort of figure out, like, okay, how do I get paper to behave like paper instead of like plaster, you know? Because you don't, in the museum or whatever, in the gallery, you can't touch these things. So you visually, you would have thought what you were looking at previously was plaster, not paper.
Right.
And I wanted it to be paper, at least to have that challenge. But it took 3 years of just working with just this material, not showing, not doing anything, just working. And finally got to this. I will tell you that I understood the importance of this part of the journey. The viewers had a whole other, like now they're getting, hip. They're like looking for it. Like I bought one back, from someone that had it in their, garage in London. It's like I said, give me that thing back, But he was smart enough to charge me a huge amount of money for it, though. But it's like, it's really like you're just like storing this thing, But the fact is that there are like these peaks and valleys in your journey, and that was one of the peaks, Even though I stopped, like as always, like making that work. Type of work, cast paper works. I knew that I needed to sort of have one around so that I can go like, okay, that was a beating, and I learned from it.
Your work, so often it reflects your touch. Your hand is visible in everything, and I wondered, because there are artists, who make, very smooth, dating back, David Smith sculpture, the very smooth steel.
Yeah.
And here, like this is a work in Houston, your hand is present in everything. And I just wondered, how do you think that affects the visual experience, or do you?
Oh, no. It's your connection to, it's the unbroken thread between you and natural forces. Allowing your body to be impacted by the sheer act of making places you in line with how the weather shaped things. So I'm just getting out of the way to allow these things to sort of like travel through me. So becoming the weather, you can call it, poetically.
And I wanted to mention, because the grid is obviously prominent, sort of underlying all your works, and of course Pete Mondrian was the first, and he used the grid as sort of a way of a pure abstraction and skewing references to representation. And I'm just wondering, with the grid, was that more like, what inspired the grid? Let me ask that.
Try to get the things out of the studio, literally out of that apartment. That was, because I hear people talk about minimalism it's how I am a part of that lineage, and I say, boy, for me, it was just practical, I needed to get things out of the apartment, so compartmentalizing them was the way. I mean, all these things are done in sections. And it also allows me to take sections, that section and out, literally, smash it into a new situation, So it's just very shrewd way of making art. But it happened naturally because I needed to literally get it out of the apartment. And I also needed to be able to hang them without assistance, So it's like the sections are only about that big, And look at that. You can see the sections, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that it becomes a now part of the layering, and it gives this idea of this intellectual level of art making. And I'll grab that. Give me that. But keep that as a secret between all of us,
And there's such variety to your surface, because there's negative space, that you're using. And then, there's obviously, space where you don't see any negative, everything's covered. And is that happens spontaneously?
No.
No? Okay.
No, but keep in mind, I can build compositions. It's interesting that kids these days, I mean, they're so connected to, the computer and what you can do with. You don't have to come in with the kind of skills I came in with, but I have hands-on skills, So it's like building a composition. Physically, actually involved myself in the composition. Felt a lot like, a great illustrator like Jack Kirby. It's like being able to sort of understand that there's dimension that, even if you're not your facilities are not as strong, understanding that in order to sort of get action to happen, you need to sort of like understand dimensionality, and that it doesn't necessarily have to sort of flow in a natural world. It can flow, in increments into other dimensions, So the layering is that. It's always about like understanding physically how to make things, how to sort of build one thing on top of another, understanding that this actually exists, this sticking out, it's beyond that dimension that's further out there. And then even further in, there's even more. The people come into the studio and they outsmarted me. They'll realize that these things are like, all these parts are all over the floor, right? And they'll say, boy, can I take that little thing there? And they'll take it and they'll frame it. They had an understanding already. In microcosm, there was a world in that little thing, a little section of this. And I saw that, and that was how this piece out here became what it is. I didn't figure that out. You guys came into the studio stealing little increments and hanging them, I didn't pick up on it till then. And I said, wait a minute, I can use this. And that's how this thing happened. Well, exactly how it happened. Yeah.
And that movement and energy, that dimensionality, that energy that comes through in all of your work. And
this one is full of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely full of that.
And I think the viewers need to understand that you hand apply each of these.
Yeah.
So this is you
in all those little pieces?
Yeah.
One at a time.
That's you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I only knew, though I'm not sure, because I wasn't joking that, like, actually, my knees, I need knee replacements now. And that was all, like I said, okay, that's it. And then all of a sudden it was intercepted by the hands. It's okay, now you need to have your hands operated on. So, okay, how did that happen? That's how it happened. So in other words, the doctors, they don't know this world. They don't know, like, we're like this kind of, outsider stuff. And so they always, when I went in, they did the MRIs and X-rays. They said, it was what happened? Some kind of trauma, huh? Some kind of like crazy. It's like, how does that happen? And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, well, I'm a sculptor. And it's like, that's an abstract term to them. They have no idea what about artists. It's like, we talk about doctors, and it's like very few of them actually know what we do. And, because when I go over and I tell them, they only get hit when I say, Google me. And then they go, oh! but the truth of it is, yeah, this shit could take you out. I'm serious. It's like I'm coming apart in parts, So and when I get my new bionic hands, I'm gonna be all good. I'm gonna be back in action. But but it was worth it. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that this does all this and this, and on the floor, walking and I used to in San Antonio when my first visit there realized that I could just moving around on the tracks and things like that, and gathering bits and pieces of things or whatever to sort of just to have around to influence my journey. I would drag in rocks and things like that in these carts, like a granny folding carts, right? And on tracks, pulling along. Don't do that. Don't do that. I'm telling you right now. And then we're in Costa Rica, bags of rocks. Like this, carrying them in the street like that. and then shipping them back to New York, going back to Costa Rica, more rocks, and man, built like a, you don't want to fight me. But yeah, but it comes with a cost, yeah.
When your work is so labor intensive, and you've described yourself as an antenna, to the world. You're a receiver of information. When you're working, and obviously the intensity of your handwork and your putting things together, what are you thinking about, or can you share that?
Repeat that again.
What are you thinking about when you're making? Are you thinking about the object itself, or other things running through your mind, or?
Well, I was being honest about the 7 crying babies. They're screaming.
They're calling at
you
in the studio.
Yeah. Is there an image of me in the studio? Because
it's coming.
It's coming. We could get to it. Let's just get right to it.
Okay, you want to go right ahead.
And then you could be quiet.
There's Madison.
Yeah. Oh, this is what I'm saying. Do not do this. That's me pushing a bale of cotton to Jack Whitten's studio. Jack was my teacher at Cooper Union. And he had a studio on Lisbon Art, which is here. I was pushing 30 blocks from 26th Street. So that's Canal Street will be the next block. I'm already here on Broadway, headed towards Canal. And so Jack was on Lisbon Art, which is right after Canal. So I would push these bales of cotton. This guy was smart enough, because it's a political statement right there, But this guy took that photo. If I was smart enough, I would have set it up. But I did not set that up. But he saw that I was doing this every other day, pushing this bale of cotton. You guys saw the cotton piece in it earlier? That's how it got done. That very piece is that one. And but let's get to that studio shot. That's it. Come on. Ridiculous. It's like, come on, you thinking? I mean, like, about what? I mean, it's like, yeah, what a question. That's the self-explanatory. It's like, okay, this has to go, that's behind you also needing attention. And you're like, oh, God, what's next? It's like, but that's the truth. That's the photo, that's the truth,
Yeah.
But yeah. But look, my goodness. I'm going to speed through these, and we'll get to them.
Yeah.
But this is, participation in a work that I couldn't have known that people were going to have this kind of reaction. They had signs saying, do not, right there it says, do not climb. And these kids are like, freak that, man. I'm up here, man. I'm on this thing.
And this is your first public outdoor artwork.
Yeah, not meant to be permanent, but I love these shots.
Yeah.
These are Instagram shots, and I wish I was more savvy about social media. But when these things are introduced to me, it's like, what? They're just having fun.
Yeah.
So it's like, I guess just get the hell out of the way and let them have fun.
Well, I'd love to talk about this as after your experience, because you traveled to China multiple times, and
4 years.
Yeah.
4 years of China. I'm going back in October for a month, October into November. Yeah.
And you were working, you want to talk about your porcelain experience and how color?
Yeah, color. You guys probably already realized that color was not, I don't think color's been introduced, right? You got a fast hit to where we're going into color, but that color happened because of working with those, in the foundry with these porcelain, what do you call those?
Artisans?
Artisans, right. Yeah. But the fact is, Jingdezhen, China, is ground zero for porcelain. Porcelain, listen, China's one of the cradle of civilization. So you go there, we're not talking Hong Kong, even Shanghai. We're talking, mainland China, deep into China, where people are real. And they're making real stuff. And they saw what I was doing, and they started throwing it in the trash because they're craftsmen, So I don't think this thing is looping, but
there.
Yeah, I'm moving it. But let's give you an idea, when I say what they were making. This is what they were making. These things are 25 foot tall monstrosities, vases that have kilns that are 25 feet tall. That's commitment to a craft, right? And I was there smashing things, and they were just throwing them out. And I would come in, and I said, where's my stuff? And they said, that was trash. And I said, that's not God, this is art. This is art. And they just like, you know, what is this? Like, what? You know, keep in mind, there was a language barrier. So like, but it's all like through pantomime. It was like, and they were like, what are you talking about? It's like, this is crap. All right. Year and a half later, doesn't take long. And I think even before that, they had figured something out. And a friend of mine called me from Shanghai and said, Leonardo, don't be mad. Don't get mad. But I saw your work in the clothing store. I said, what are you talking about? They said, well, these guys copied what I was doing in porcelain and using it as decoration in the clothing store. And I was like, oh my God, beautiful. Listen, what I came out of there with, fair trade, you know, because I came out of there with color. I don't think this thing is looping anymore. How do you make it loop? I think we knocked it out of the loop. But yeah, we can just control it, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. And
well, go ahead. You can control it.
Well,
give me that thing. I control it.
You control it.
But that's color.
Yeah.
So the color comes from China, from working with glazing and all this over a 4-year period. Literally an explosion, right? So this is the monster that came out from China. So yes, you can do my stuff in the clothing store in China. I don't have a problem. You know what I mean? I love those guys. And I'm going back to get more of it, you know?
And there's sand in there too.
Yeah.
And was that related to the idea of porcelain and mud or
no.
Okay?
It was just
right.
no, honey, no. You can write that. It sounds good. But I did tell you that the color was that, okay, you needed a surface that wasn't just paint. You need something that was dimensional in some kind of way that had heart, that had grit, literally. So sand is that. So but it did take some, it took, Madison Park was the first real iteration of that sand situation. And why did that come up? I can't remember. I don't remember how the color I remember, but the sand aspect of it is a different thing. Oh, I know what it was. Because I had the idea that if people were gonna climb on this thing, they need to have some kind of traction. That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's where it came from.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna meditate more on that, but I'm almost sure, because it makes sense that was the first iteration, really. And this came almost like right after it.
Yeah.
And and it's the one that's actually the mainstay now. I mean, it comes up in different situations, like in Basel and the Hammer Museum. My God, it's a lot of Wadsworth, a lot of places. This explosion is now like a thing.
There's an element of this that's out there in 235T.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because we're sitting around in the studio. You know what I mean? It's like, it's all fair game. Yeah.
And this has such movement to it. I mean, it's literally does look like it's
action. Action.
Coming off the wall.
But look what it brings out of them. I mean,
yeah.
It brings it out of them. I mean, and I couldn't foresee that, but now it's something that it's like, just get out of the way, man. Yeah.
So one of the questions was from the education staff is, what is your top priority when you're creating an installation? Do you have one?
Installation. You mean like when I did this out here, top priority. Coming in, understanding the space. But honestly, it doesn't take long. And I don't necessarily, did I do a site visit? I did a site visit.
But okay. I think from what I understood, you don't do a lot of site visits.
No, I don't, no. Because I can't remember doing this. Yeah. But now that you say that, it's like, okay, I remember there were 2 times when I was here to come in and then come in and do the attack, but it's not necessary.
Yeah.
It's not. Because, these things go up, they look complicated, but I knock these things out in 2 seconds. Like literally, installing these things is quick. Even monstrosities like this, it's probably a day and a half, maybe not even that really.
I know.
And yours, what took, we were done in no time flat.
I know, and it's surprising how fast, because you're transforming the architecture.
Yeah, but there's like I said, honestly, there's a dance. And you understanding the rhythm of things, understanding composition, all these things are part of how I see. So it's immediate. So I didn't necessarily have to do that visit. I could have just I gave you the size and everything, send the material, and understanding that that got 2 walls that are like this long, and then we used all the material, didn't we?
Yes.
All right.
We did.
It's always like this fish and loaves kind of things, like, there's always enough.
And kind of going back, one thing I was fascinated by was that Merce Cunningham, who's one of the most important 20th century choreographers, called you to collaborate.
96.
Yeah. And the slide is in there. We can loop it back around, or you
guys saw it, right?
Did you see the dancing?
Yeah, he passed, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, did that put the idea of dance in your mind? You talk about the dance, or is that just...
No, other things came up from that, but not that.
What came out of
did
that?
I say dancing because, like, as black folks, we know about dancing. We can move it, but like what he did come in with was this way of instructing the situation. Like, okay, his philosophy or his way of making things or realizing his whole performance is that he does the phrasing choreography. The artist does his thing, the musician does his thing, all separate from one another, never having a conversation with each other. That is consistent throughout. Did you know this?
Well, I knew it was separate. I had read that, but I didn't realize you all didn't have a conversation.
Wait a minute. You knew that because you read it because I said it, or did you know it before?
I read it in an interview that you did.
Okay. Isn't that something? I have a sneaking suspicion that no one knows this, unless you're really in that world to understand his philosophy. And it's a beautiful one. And I definitely took that. That was what I came away with. Because like Stanley Kubrick makes his films, he does it the same way. They're in compartments. And those compartments have to now come together. He has enough, if he selects you, he already has that much confidence in you. You're a part of the composition. He's composing.
Yeah.
And so so he's doing his phrasing, and he's just like, I could have come in there with anything, and they would have navigated around whatever, And I asked him, I said, how do you know it's going to work? And he said, that's the beauty of it. And I said, wow, embrace that, man. I came out of there with that one. And so, it wasn't as, as simple as, this idea that, dancing. No, it was like far more like, absolute trust in how you're navigating all these things, And that is about as risk-taking as you can imagine. The opening night, curtain goes up, boom, everything comes together. And he says, sometimes it falls, sometimes it doesn't. But the beauty is a trust.
What was your impression?
When he called me initially, I was like, who is this guy? I had to call around and say, this guy looks like, sound like a real fanboy, like, we great to work with you. And I was like, who the hell is this guy, And it's like, then I came out of there with, oh my God. It was like, head this big, with all this information.
He's worked with Andy Warhol.
Yes, and John Cage. I mean, it's like, my goodness, it goes on and on. I mean, I saw him actually on stage with Baryshnikov.
Believe it or not.
I mean, it was old. You couldn't call me he was doing dancing, but it was beautiful.
Yeah.
He was like, because he was really old, and shuffling on the stage, and Baryshnikov was also not his young self, but he was leaping around. And up against, it was John, my God, it was, who was the artist behind him? Can't remember who the artist was at the moment, but it was really something. It was one of his closest friends, and I'm blanking out.
Yeah.
Yeah, not Cage, but
Merce Cunningham?
Merce Cunningham, but we're talking about the artist that was behind. It wasn't Rauschenberg, but I'll get it in a second. It was someone where it's right on the tip of our tongue, but it was magnificent. So he was shuffling around on stage, this at Lincoln Center. And that was actually the second time that I had seen my piece, because first they showed it at City Center. And then it went on its tour all around the world.
Oh, really?
Which I would have wished I had gone on that tour, because it was in Korea, all over the place. Yeah. And now it became like one of their mainstays, the piece I had done with them. It was called Ground Level Overlay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now, this whole collection is part of the Walker, I think. Is it Wexner or Walker? I can't remember. think it's a walker.
Probably
yeah.
Walker.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
what an experience. And I mean, when you're talking about, this is your experiences.
Jasper John.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. When you're talking about your experiences, one time you said, because you've traveled the globe, and sometimes you talk about, I don't know how that's going to influence my work until maybe you see the piece afterwards. Is that true? Or?
No, you're saying it all messed up.
Okay.
Let me clear that up for you.
Okay.
All right. I don't think so much about the experience of the travel. All right. The first time where there was a knowable effect, meaning like where I traveled and then picked up on, because I think this had always been happening. But when I was in Gorée Island in Senegal, Dakar's first biennial was like 93.
Okay.
And I was there with a bunch of older artists. And very interesting trip all around, because like when black folks say they're going to Africa, we say going back, and it's like, it's like going back home. And we've never been there, so it's like, it's a spiritual journey. So you go there, and then you go to Gorée Island where they have the dungeons and, and it's like, because it was a whole, this stages, like catch, imprison, that long boat ride to wherever, to Brazil, to the new continent, to, all over, we're spread about. And you have that experience, being in that dungeon, and it's like, these catacombs and these slits in the walls where like we can get air. If you're close enough to those slits, you're gonna survive, and then if you're further in, you're gonna die. And then you put on that boat, and then you get another horrific experience, And a lot of you jump off the boat because you can't take it. You come over here, and what you end up with, it's like, it's like some superhumans really went through a whole lot, and like and as I'm making things, it's like, okay, I don't title things, don't talk about the experiences, but I know damn well when I look at those like rust cotton boxes, I mean, just claustrophobic aspect. It's like 3 years later, it's like you're making these works, and you go like, this looks very familiar. Very familiar, So it's like, so I think that, that's when I realized traveling is a must. So you'll see in the images like Machu Picchu, of course, China, you name it.
Peru,
it's like,
Nazca lines.
So all these cradles of civilization, especially ones that, that, if you're going to be a receiver or like an antenna, receiving information, right? It's not a bad idea to place yourself in these places so that you can benefit from, from ground up what's coming into you. And then you get to the studio, and these things, they're going to come out. But you don't have to call it. You don't have to say, I'm making work about this specifically, because that would cage and imprison the whole idea of how these things have to come out naturally. So you just get out of the way, and it's like I said, it could be 3 years, many years later, and that's me here.
That's you here. Yeah, and I think one of the questions was like, to what degree is your work solitary, and which part of it is collaborative?
Well, if you understand I think there's having an understanding of how things should form naturally, poetically, it's real easy to sort of work with other bodies, and get them to sort of be absolute participant in the journey. So I've always in awe, really, of how that works. The choreography of all these different bodies. You give them, the trick of this, really, is to give them the confidence that they are also part of this. But you imply that. You imply it. You don't say it. Because you say it sounds really corny. So you imply, and because they a lot of them are kind of like they're in this state of awe. So they're like, it's like you want to get them out of that real quick, and bring them into the family, so that they go like, oh, it's like, And they start putting things up, and it's like, and they'll understand where these things belong. And if I say that you become the weather, you embed this in philosophy in them, that they also naturally have to become that. And they do, because I can tell you a lot of times I was not necessarily saying, put this here, put this. No, I have a laser pointer. There are times when I'll push things back in line, but once things go on that wall, I don't take it off. Just so you guys know, don't take it off, because that's not the way the weather works. It doesn't work that way. Yeah.
And you had described some of the larger pieces before as planets, like anchoring, like it's a cosmos. So it's like a universe.
The truth of the matter, once you realize where those things go, you can get away with murder. I mean, really, you can. And those guys can play now. They can go crazy. And man, you can see them light up when they're putting those things in. It's like, they got this.
I want to ask about the metal up there. Is that aluminum? Okay, and a lot of sculptors are just known for welding metal. That's just a tradition. But can you describe, you're doing it hand?
Just folding it over and riveting. And, yeah. But it's like, I think it's the physical of it actually is the attraction to me.
Yeah.
So being able to sort of like bend things and shape things and, beat it up, it's a thrill for me,
Do you ever get tired of a material? You're primarily organic, with wood and cotton and paper.
Yeah, but wood is already shifting. Finally. Finally. Yeah, it's been with me. I hadn't even noticed. That's just because there's so many iterations of wood. I mean, you look at that and you can look at a lot of different, but if wood is in play, it's like I'm starting to notice that it's enough of it that I need to now start to challenge it in the same way that I challenge those other situations. Okay. So I'm talking right now that's happening. Yeah, so you'll see the next exhibition, on this side of the globe, you'll say like, where's the wood?
And is that, I heard you describe that as reaching? That you're reaching?
Jazz musicians do that. They reach, you hear Coltrane talk about, reaching. So it's like when you can see like Coltrane doing this. I mean, a lot of jazz musicians do this, but it's just a matter of like when you can't follow. You're like there's a rhythmic tone, and then all of a sudden he's going bam somewhere else, and it's like you're going like, what the hell is that? But he's not stopping. He's still reaching. Okay. He's after something. He's going after it. Okay. And you can hear it in Love Supreme. Yeah. It's this all of a sudden he's on this other tangent. And and in those live performances, forget about it. It's like, so yes, I align myself actually with that kind of creating. That the reach is so important. And then you embed and impart that onto anyone around you so they understand that you need to break through this bracket, this barrier, this thing that wants to hold you, and it makes its appearance. Yeah.
So this is a moment, would you say, where you're shifting from wood?
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what's
Yeah,
next.
so am I. I'm on the other side of that. But I am the biggest critic when it comes to my work. Obviously, if I keep shifting, and at the same time asking more and more questions, it's like I know at this point I need to become even more this than the physical. And it's an interesting thing to go through, but we ain't meant to last. So I think that in the end you understand that, especially if you understand the natural flow of things. Mm-hmm. So so you adjust, to the next iteration, and so I'm adjusting right now. So so that's why the material but it's happening all at the same time and naturally. So it's not a forced thing. Even I tell you guys that I have to have operation. That was already coming, meaning I was already kind of thinking, and then rhythmically, things were kind of moving into, I'm not spending 16 hours on the table saw now, It's all of a sudden I'm doing things different, So
So one of our educators working with children wanted to ask, because of your background with comics, they were curious about you see here the torn comics. Yeah. And if that was a reference to your past or has happened to be laying around.
It seems to be a beautiful reference, but I see it as color. In the same way I'm not watching Mark Bradford, friend also, use, like materials that are, like traditionally what they are, and then all of a sudden you interject them into art. And it just comes like another, Rauschenberg does it, it's like this, it's another layer of color, understanding how paint is applied, how color is applied, and understanding texture and layers. All these things come with their own, set, of history, and, once you understand it, you don't think about it now. It's like something you just like, all this stuff is on the floor, materials around you, and then it's like pop, 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 pop. Yeah. Attack, attack, attack.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you, because shortly before our installation, you had done a installation in an 18th century chapel in Breton, England, Yorkshire Sculpture Park. And
is that in here?
It's not, but I saw the video on it, and I found that kind of fascinating, because there's such a, you're talking about the history of materials and labor, and being in an 18th century chapel, I wondered how that, what that felt like, working in that space.
Well, it is a natural reverence, of course, for the not only the structure but the spiritual content of a place. There's so many bodies and spirits are embedded in those places. This is just a fact. I mean, it's like whether or not you want to believe it, but there's an energy, key lines to our existence. And being respectful of those things will make you even more aware of those things. So when you're in those kind of spaces, if you're an artist and you're a receiver of information, it's going to come out. It's going to you now, like have to, become it, and also at the same time, navigate. And I'm sorry that piece is not in here. That's that.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And it's not that old. We're talking not even a year old.
Yeah. Well, I thought, because you did that before you came here, and I think, that's one of the things our staff was curious about. Like, what did you feel you learned or gained from doing number 235T
That's
here?
What that is. That's that. Because I don't know the numbers.
Oh, 2, 3. Well, there's I know. There's a lot of numbers.
I know number 8.
This one.
That's it. No,
this
number
one
8,
out
number
here.
14, number 43, number 90.
This one.
That's what is it?
235T.
235T.
Yeah.
Yep. You know it's headed to Phoenix. They bought that.
Are you serious?
Yes. You should have jumped it, right? You had it. Yeah. You got to get it back to me as quickly as possible so that I can get it. Well, Olga and Jeremy, they got that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I want to go back to ours real quick. One thing I wanted to say, because I love this piece, because every time I come out, I notice something different.
Yeah.
And I have stood underneath it and looked up and seen a cityscape. Those kids did. But do you consider, you have your own visual language, but this is like, it's kind of like your hieroglyphics.
That's correct. Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah, I would say
but it keeps evolving, right?
Because the materials keep changing. Surprisingly, porcelain didn't make it back in this, because a lot of those porcelain pieces, hopefully, when I go back there, like in November, I'll be able to bring a lot of that material back here. And then it will make its way into, because I haven't done any porcelain works here. In the States, but all that work that was done there, and I don't even have images of those things, but I need to start interjecting them into these presentations. But I think that it's a catalog of my language, vocabulary, indeed hieroglyphics. Yeah, absolutely. Because if we were to look back at the one in Houston, very different from this one. Very different. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's back.
It's back.
I don't know how far back.
There it is.
Yeah, that's on the glass wall, sheer glass wall.
Yeah.
And I did not sign off on that one. And we're talking about deadly dangerous. And like in the FBI building of all places, the Mickey Leland building in Houston. And like that thing goes up like 75 feet up. And this is made up, and very different. You guys see the difference between what you guys have out here. It's because the materials change over time. And like, so you keep adding these new things to your vocabulary, and then they become a part of these types of words. You know, there's the one in the airport in San Francisco, and of course Facebook has theirs, and their Frank Gehry building.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is Crystal Bridges.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, they all have their own little thing, you know.
And you call the smaller pieces that are interjected speed lines. I mean, that's what I love about our piece too, is there's such a rhythmic movement.
Illustrating.
You know, and you're moving.
Action lines.
Yeah, action lines.
Right? Understanding how to draw.
Yeah.
This is not like computer generated. This is actually feeling it. Yeah.
But that's one thing I think you don't do any preparatory drawings or photographs, or like you said, you just kind of come in and respond. So it has that spontaneity to it. Okay, I'm going to read a quote. We're going to take questions here at 7:15, but this is a great quote. Okay. You said this in 2019. I think the best possible place that an artist can find himself is a place where he doesn't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the truth of it. It's like, you know, always realizing that if you're going to push forward, always knowing also that you need to be ignorant of the possibilities, you know, stripping down things to the barest essentials and saying, you know, I don't know everything. So it's like, how can I actually get to the next iteration, the next situation? That's an unknown, you know. I don't know. I do not know. and then that's when the juices start flowing. You start trying to figure out, your brain starts working. And like, you understand you now have to navigate towards this very dark place that has, you know, you're holding a flashlight. And you're trying to sort of make your way through something that is, you don't know what's out there, you know. But it's a beautiful experience from my perspective. It's terrifying too.
Yeah.
But it's also because you could straight up park it and say, I am going to be making cottonworks here, and I'm going to be making rustworks and the signature, and it's going to be all good because people are buying this, and it's going to keep me. I say, is that interesting? No, it is not. Not knowing. Always getting to a place where you're comfortable and then stripping that away, taking it away, and now you're butt naked again, you know? Yeah, and now it's like get on with it, baby. Yeah, yeah. And I've never been married, no kids. Love women, love you guys, love kids. Never put the two things together. There's a straight up compromise that goes down with relationships and, you know, that, and it's like, it's beautiful, but I know that it's like, man, it's not, you can't take people on this journey. It's too risky, you know? It's like they could starve. You know, it's like, because I'll be too busy, like, you know, challenging and doing stupid things, you know? So it's.
Well, I think it's really impressive and amazing the way you challenge yourself, and you keep challenging yourself with new materials and new experiences and finding new avenues to express yourself. So I'm in awe. And I'm so grateful that we were able to have you come and do this installation. Do we want to, Madeline, I think we're at the time where we're going to let the audience ask questions.
Yeah, this is my favorite part.
All right, I've got a microphone, so if you've got a question, raise your hand. I'll come to you. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Eager in the back.
Trying to get my board.
I'm trying to get
I have a bunch of questions, but
I can hear you.
People ask too. You talked about how you create these you're in your apartment, building these pieces. Do other people in the apartment know what's going on in here?
you asked that question like you already know the answer to that question.
Or even the owners?
There are
do they
infamous
know?
stories about, skeletons hanging out the window. Now what that is, like roadkill in the beginnings, number 8 was made from dead animal parts, right? So a friend and I would go to a place called Heather Hills, which is going towards the Hamptons in New York. And they had quicksand pits where people go out hunting. And so we would drag out full-on deer from the pits. And I had learned at Cooper Union how to cure animal hides and rip out the innards and dry them out. But I had to dry them out. I had to put them outside the window. And like, I had the best neighbors. Rarely did they actually ever complain, but I knew they always looked at me like, okay, this guy's like, he's into some kind of voodoo or something. And there was that time where as I'm cooking things, there's a piece in here. We have that piece with all the boxes on the floor. You know
Yes.
what I'm talking about? Yeah, that piece. Find that thing. But it's like it actually has a monstrous story.
This?
That goes into. Oh no, that's not.
All right.
Yeah. But it's a bunch of these burnt boxes.
Oh, they spill out on the
That's
floor.
yeah.
I know what you're talking-
But
that's early.
it's there
There
it is, that one. So in order to get that material to do what it is doing, I had to like actually cook it on the stove. And it causes all this steam to sort of come out, not burning it really, you're just kind of steaming it. And all this is going out the window. And I hear the fire engines, And I didn't connect it with me. I was like, they look out the window and they're pointing up at me. And I'm thinking, there's a fire somewhere, like I'm looking up, and the smoke is pouring. Now, from their perspective, they're seeing all the smoke pouring out of the window with me looking out of the window. So it's like, I didn't have time to process all of it because the way the fire department works, you find out the hard way. It's like, they don't ring the doorbell, they actually go for the hinges and they take the door off that way, And I hear this like the door's coming off, And like a noise in the hallway, and I run, and I'm looking out the window, and I hear this, and then I run to the door, and it's like who is it? It's like these guys come, knock that door down, and they push me out of the way, and they go right to where the fire is. And they're like looking like, it's like calling downstairs. Oh, yeah. He's like burning stuff on the stove. And I'm like, and I'm terrified because, black folks and police, it's like, that's what I taught police. Fire department, different story. But it's like, I didn't know that, but it's like as I'm talking to them and they're talking to me, it's like, I think I'm going to get arrested, And they ask me a bunch of questions like, what's going on here? I'm like, and the guy said, come here. And they go into the other room, and it's like all this burnt material. All over this one room is covered with burnt material, and they're like this, they're losing it. You know what I mean? It's like they're trying. Remember what I said about the doctors? They have no idea about our world. It's like we're total aliens to them. So it's like, and as soon as I said I'm an artist, everything got like this. It was like, and you know what they said? Get a fire extinguisher. Yeah. So it's like, and that was it. And they left. No arrest, no. But I just let you know that we live in a rarefied world. Artists. It's like you don't know that until the two things meet.
You need to put that story as part of your gallery write-up next
All right, who has another question? Oh, great, I'll come to you.
I'm actually really loud. I can just...
Well,
I
we're
can hear
recording. Yeah, so we'll be putting this online.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, I'll play along. You actually leaped right to what I was going to ask, which was immateriality in your work. I think it's an easy read to jump straight to the bold materiality in your work, and it's really interesting. But you're talking about fire. You actually never mentioned it until she asked, and it seems very present. There's charred material.
No, there isn't. That was only that one piece, and I always like to correct that because there are two things that I have a tendency to stay away from: found and burning. That's steam, and that's not burnt back there. It's actually a wash that makes it appear that way. Now, I'll tell you there's a reason why. Because when you burn something, it is burnt. All right? It doesn't go any further than that. And like, it's effective, but it is only that. And it's jarring. We understand, we have a natural fear of fire. I mean, all creatures have a natural fear of fire. So when you burn things, it is a very base instinct that we relate to that situation. So I stay away from it. When you make something appear as though it was burned, different story. Intuitively, you'll look at it and you'll go all over the place. You'll think burnt, but you'll go to all these other places. You know what I'm saying? It will allow you to do that. But it's just like a wash. And it's layered, but it also has layers of possibility,
Thanks.
Thank you so much for your talk.
What's up, honey?
I'm good. How you doing?
All right.
All right. I believe in your bio, it said somewhere where you was at Cooper Union that you kind of had this connection between art and science. And I looked more and more at your work, and I think more about scientific methods between art and those connections of how you become the weather, and like your rust studies down to your plaster and paper studies. So I'm just kind of wondering, one, when do you think that there is some type of scientific method that drives your work as far as the elements?
Yeah, absolutely. There's an alchemy. And that, to embrace one thing, the natural, but also understanding how those things are actually realized. Physically, how they are made to become, to visually look like this. So, the rusting process is not done, it's understanding how things break down. And then adding that very same thing, not only to your understanding, but also to your overall language. And then it all of a sudden now becomes a part of your vocabulary. So the alchemy is absolutely there. And there's a lot of, experimenting. I mean, to even realize, like even in San Antonio now, I have a studio space in San Antonio, a little ranch, a much bigger space than my space in New York. I mean, it allows now 4 studio spaces on one plot of land. And the heat, that 104 degrees and up, that you guys experience, that you cower from, I actually love it. Because it cracks paint unbelievably, you know what I'm saying? I cannot get it to do that in New York, you know what I mean? I went buck wild crazy this last summer, in San Antonio, just like making these things. I'm going there tomorrow to ship that stuff back to New York, So that alchemy is crucial to realizing other works, yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see you coming.
I'm wondering if you prepare your materials in advance, not knowing how you're going to use them. Like, for example, did you do a bunch of steaming of stuff and put it aside thinking I'll use this someday? Did you do a bunch of beating with a chain or something? I mean, do you do this?
It's made from all the works. There's a whole bunch of other works, previous works.
Okay, because the pictures of you in your studio, you see all this stuff around you.
That's right.
And so,
they get taken apart to create other things.
Okay. So you don't necessarily have a vision in mind?
No.
Okay. But
I would be smart to do that, honestly. Because, you saw how crowded the studio gets.
Yes.
It's because it's all these full-on works that got created. And I wouldn't call them failures. They're just like things that you were inspired to do. And you hobble them together with all this material, you do all this alchemy in order to give them their services and stuff, and then they fall flat on their faces. And then you have to move on to the next crying baby. So it's so it's usually, like I said, rotating 7 of these crying babies. And then and then one leaves and another replaces it. So there's always this rotation. So and within that, they borrow from each other. So it's I'll take that. So it's this one needs this over here, jamming into this one. So yeah.
So when you were coming to do this installation here, how did you choose what to bring?
That is a good question because, like I said, it's like the fish and loaves story. It's there's always I bring all that material and it usually gets almost all of it gets used. I don't think there's ever been a time where all of it didn't get used. You know what I mean?
But you were thinking, well, I'd like to take some cotton and I'd like to take some of this stuff that looks like pieces of porcelain in bed, and I'd like to take some, and then...
I just throw them all in the bag. I mean, it's a big bag, but it's like, they say crates and stuff, but it's like, grab that, put that in there, throw that in there. And it's like, but it's quick. It's not like, it's not methodical. And I'll tell you, honestly, I said the anchors, the bigger parts, right? Once you sort of get those things, you grab those things, anything is possible. So it's like, it's almost like, she tells me the size of the space, and like, and I go like, you know what I'm saying? With those anchors, the anchors.
So you make sure you bring some anchors.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to be in there, but you got to bring enough of them. And then it allows for all those other things, like they're planets. So and within the planets, there has to be this cosmos where stars and all these things have to exist, right? But those planetoids are absolute, they have to be a part of it. Mm-hmm.
So the work that you're taking from San Antonio back to New York, what is it looking like?
Oh boy, a lot of colors, a lot of cracking because of the heat. Just the possibilities of what I can do are limitless. So I also then just shipped a lot of things from New York. It hasn't arrived yet. We'll get there like next week. But to get completely devoured by the San Antonio touch or experience. I'm a Texican now. So it's like I am so enjoying that space. I haven't fully, grabbed it yet because of just the schedule. But it's my dream to actually be full-on Texican, So like, it's like I'm pushing everything towards that. So they would still have a studio in New York, but I need to spend more time with you guys. Yeah, so it's like, yeah. Yeah, know that I actually, in 1994, I came here for Art Pace, Linda Pace, in her organization. That was what introduced me to Texas. And that's how I fell in love with it, yeah.
Okay, we had a question on this side. I think we have a time for a couple more, so I'll start with you.
What was your mother's hopes and dreams for you as she was pushing back?
Well, listen, the name Leonardo, my mother would take full credit for that. But she didn't name me. All right. Just let you know this. Now, she was here, I would say exactly what I'm telling you. They didn't name me. My father, who she threw out when I was like probably about 6 or 7, was an artist. I knew this because he left behind these books, these drawings. And and we would sneak, and my mother had them in her drawer, and we would sneak and look at him when she went to work. It was like, oh, it's like he could draw, And now all my brothers were drawing, but I was the better. So I kept it going, But but that is a skill that you actually you inherit that. You say like alcoholism, it's like you can inherit like the ability to draw and paint and make things from, it's consistent. So like I knew I got this from my father. That was one thing I got from him. But the other thing is the fact that his name was Leon. All right? And I was the second born. We all have these odd names. There's Anthony Carlos, I'm Leonardo DeVerne, then there's Thursil Devon and Christopher Anton and Patrick Ryan, one Irish guy. But it's like, but the fact is that being second, he names, does that not, is that still happening? Like fathers, you name their second after, is named after the father in some kind of way.
I think so.
Yeah. But I was named after him, but he expanded the name from Leon to Leonardo. Because he's an artist. It makes sense. My mother didn't know who Leonardo was because when I didn't know, I used to get beat up when I was in school for the name Leonardo. Because growing up in the hood, you were supposed to beat the guy named Leonardo up, you know what I mean? So like when I got to Catholic school, the nuns told me, they said, oh, like Leonardo da Vinci. And I was like, what? There's another Leonardo, So this is the waking up period, you know what I mean? We're talking second grade, I get to learn that there's another Leonardo. So it's like, and that he was not bad, And and from that point, it's like, I embraced the name, but I did not want that name, Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have one question left. Okay, we'll come right here.
Honey, I'm down for whatever. I'm like, if you got me juiced, keep it going.
Okay, this is back on the Texas theme. When you have the entire wall, which you had, it's like
virtually every piece is in the shape of Texas.
Oh.
And they're all on the right side as we walk in. So are you left-handed? So you put, your brain is working, so you put it there?
I'm both, you know. Yeah, I'm
Where
suffering
is
from
that?
both hands. But
That
like,
if you
yeah.
notice.
Well, you see
Not
Texas?
this one. No, not this. This one I see the buffalo, and the buffalo fur and the cotton and snakes. Okay, this wall has all Texas shapes, and it's beautiful. I walk in, and every time I come. So I just want to thank you for that.
Oh, honey, you're not wrong. And that's where I number these works, because you have the opportunity to sort of like, they're mirrors. So if you're standing in front of it, whatever you're seeing, whatever your experience is, that's actually what it is, you know? And I can't tell you otherwise, and I wouldn't. Yeah. And I wouldn't tell you what I'm thinking either, so you can't get me to do that.
All right, I think we're going to end on that note. Thank you all for your wonderful questions.
All right? Okay.
All right, I invite you all to explore the installation, which has a half an hour left. Will be open until 8 p.m. Enjoy.